Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is William Keat of lawandalchemy.org and commonlawconstitution.org. So, I'm just going to put together, this is going to be a relatively short video compared to some of those that have gone out, because I just want to address some of the excitement that's been going on, and what I think is quite a lot of manipulation that's been going on in recent days. So, there appears to be a lot of excitement that's usually accompanied with a sort of a lack of discernment that then causes people to kind of walk into traps, and that's what seems to be going on. And I'm also proposing that there is a sort of a grander scale manipulation going on, particularly in regards to trial by jury. So that's what this video is about. It's just going to just examine a little bit about the manipulation that I think I can see happening here. It's pretty obvious, actually. And then some of that sort of more complex, potential grander overarching deception that I think might be at play, specifically regarding trial by jury. Now, the first thing is the Ricky Jones situation. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail in this video. There has been quite a lot of quite good, accurate commentary on this. Long and the short of it is that people are getting very hot under the collar about that verdict of Ricky Jones, and they're comparing it with Lucy Connolly. And although I would agree that there is a sort of a sense of injustice overall in that comparison, when you dig deeper into those cases, you'll start to see how things will have played out in each of those cases. There are a lot of calls and accusations of two-tier justice again. And I dealt with this back in the spring in a video. I think I called it two-tier distraction. So is it really two-tier distraction, or is it just good old manipulation? So most reactions to these kinds of situations have demonstrated not only ignorance of the cases themselves, and the procedures, but also the sort of broader detail as well. And they cause people to kind of fall into traps and create what I would call a sort of self-sabotaging effect. You know, people are saying things like, what the hell were the jury up to? How can the jury get it so wrong? I understand, on the face of it, but really, were you there at the trial? Did you hear the evidence? Did you see the nuance? Did you see the context? Did you understand the context at the time? No, you didn't, because you weren't there. Yeah. So you just got to be really careful with this kind of stuff. Now, I would recommend watching, in the case of the Lucy Connolly case, I would recommend watching the recent explanation by Alan Robert Shaw on the Art of Law channel. He's going into the Lucy Connolly situation. That's very interesting. And maybe read the recent article that the Secret Barrister put out just recently, to get a more nuanced understanding of both of those two cases and what was really going on. Because people are making a real idiots of themselves, actually, if you don't mind my saying. And some of those actually are politicians as well on the world stage, making, quite ill-informed comments about this. But it's just members of the general public as well, and members of the freedom movement, making idiots of themselves too. Now, the other recent event that I wanted to go into was the arrests at the event in London in support of Palestine Action. Yeah, lots of people were arrested for waving placards in support of what is that organization that's now prescribed as a terrorist group. I'm talking about the background behind it. Now, one of the things that people didn't spot, even people quite close to me and my material didn't spot it either, and were missing, was the fact that the very organization that was behind that demonstration the other day in London is an organization called Defend Our Juries. Now, I have quite a lot of questions about that organization. I've been watching them for months, and I have reached out to them at least 3 times, and I've never had a response back. Why? So we've got Will Keat, who is all about defending the constitutional concept of trial by jury and jury independence, is being ignored by an organization called Defend Our Juries that claims to do exactly that. Interesting. So why would that be? So what are they actually up to, and what are they all about? Well, have a look at their website, see what you think. Have a look at their causes. Now, I've talked about them before. in relation to the Trudy Warner case, actually, in the early spring. Um, but the interesting thing is that very little has been mentioned by Defend Our Juries of the Leveson review, which is interesting. Do you find that odd at all? An organization called Defend Our Juries, but barely mentioning the most recent attack on jury trial. So consider that. Consider what is going on there. Is there a broader reason why people aren't talking about the Leveson review and the further threat to trial by jury? This is the most serious onslaught to your birthright and justice framework. Trial by jury and the right of the people to test overreaching government legislation through jury independence and annulment is meant to be the central pillar of your constitution. And yet, very few are talking about this. So why would that be? Remember that under natural law, you manifest your reality not only through what you do and the actions that you take, but almost more from the things that you don't pay attention to and remain silent over. That's an important thing to remember. So we've had many months since the announcement of the Leveson review before Christmas, right back then, and its publication of part one only, 2 months ago. We could have had so many voices educating the public about this issue. But instead, it's been almost silence, almost nothing. What an opportunity we missed. So what about this greater threat to trial by jury? Is there an overarching deception at play here? Are we beginning to see trial by jury being cast perhaps in a negative light by some? People wanting to sort of dissuade people from looking at it even. What's going on there? Yeah, now the Ricky Jones situation was interesting because a lot of people have, of course, been critical of the verdict because it feels on the surface unfair. But as I've said, have a closer look at that. Now, interestingly, as Black Belt Barrister said on one of his videos the other day, it appears that juries are slow to convict for free speech issues, perhaps. But isn't that a good thing? Yeah, it's interesting how when many in the freedom movement perceive a win on the other side, they call for the denial of the very principles that they like to say they support. Yeah, so let's just look at an example of that. That's just slightly more trivial, maybe. Well, not trivial for Trump. After the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, there were people saying things like, shame they missed. And on the MAGA side, there were people who normally support constitutional principles like free speech, demanding that they be sacked from their jobs. So either you're principled or you're not. Stop being partisan. Yeah, and you need to rest on matters of principle and justice and get out of your party politics. Now, let's take the most important principle in relation to juries. So what would that be? The principle of self-governance. It's absolutely baked into the universe and natural law. So are you going to unify over that principle? Are you going to come together over that? If you're supporting the very idea of self-governance, which is at the heart of individual rights and equity, are you going to support self-governance through the jury? If you're going to do that, then you have to get behind that idea of calling for the restoration of that birthright. Otherwise, you're outsourcing judgment to professionals. That's what they want. Right? Remember the backdrop of the Leveson review. They're wanting a destruction of your national sovereignty, your constitutional rule of law, your heritage, your background, your customary principles. They want to get rid of it all. Go and look at the principles of the Fabian Society. That's what they want, ladies and gentlemen. And yet the very safeguard in your rule of law against that is the principle of trial by jury, self-governance, the people governing themselves, taking away the power of the legislature and handing it to the people instead. But I don't see you supporting that. I don't see you rallying around that concept and getting behind it and unifying. So it's not going to change. The situation will not change until you change your mindset. Now let's have a look at the language change as well, because just watch the language change over the whole jury topic, because it can be really subtle. Don't know whether you've noticed, but people starting to use the word perverse in politics just over the last few days again. It's just beginning to come to the surface. Now, perverse is the term that's used in perverse verdict, which is what they, the establishment, call it when a jury annuls, uses jury nullification. Yeah, it's a subtle attempt to stain the concept of jury independence. But exercising your conscience on a jury following hard deliberation is not the same thing as exercising your emotions, and is certainly not perverse. So here's a quotation from Lord Devlin, who is an establishment man who got it right. Have a listen to this. Perverse has come to be a lawyer's word for a jury which offers its own standards instead of those recommended by lawyers. It is an unfortunate, even impertinent word to use about an equal when all you are saying is that you disagree with the conclusions which it is his job to reach and not yours. His job to reach and not yours. I should have put the emphasis there. Let me just read that again, actually, that last bit. An even impertinent word to use about an equal when all you are saying is that you disagree with the conclusions which it is his job to reach and not yours. Lord Devlin. So, what we need to do now is to start watching for cases where the idea of jury nullification, the concept, is placed alongside a story or narrative where most right-minded people would think some punishment should be given. Just watch closely and see what's going to go on there, because I think that is part of the deliberate deception. So, in conclusion, this is why strengthening right now your understanding of these topics, understanding some of the nuance and the detail of these subjects, is your defense against this manipulation. So becoming familiar with the truth behind why justice, jury justice, I should say, is hard to beat, is critical. You need to become familiar with precisely why that is, not just accepting my word on it. Do your own research and reading. Knowing why it is that many claims about problems with juries being biased, racist, or they find complex subjects difficult to understand has been rebutted by solid research. You need to know that. That in fact it's quite the opposite. The truth is actually that a lot of academic research and memoirs have shown that jury justice is quality justice. To keep in mind also that juries, in the way that they are currently operating today, is in a watered down, degraded fashion, a degraded state from how it should be. So remember that if jury trial was restored to its proper form, juries would be judging on all aspects of the case. And whilst that they can take guidance from the judge or the convener, they wouldn't be being directed by the judge. They wouldn't be taking directions. You need to remember that. It's very easy to forget this kind of stuff, that the form of trial by jury that we have in place today is itself, even though it's doing quite a lot of good, even in its reduced state, it wouldn't be in that if we actually had a proper restoration of our constitution. Yeah, so the jury, the jurors are the judges and are meant to be the final arbiter of law and your defense against unjust legislation. Well, you're on the cusp of losing it, and almost nobody is talking about it. Why? I suspect they've already got the legislation drawn up. So, you either get summary justice in which judgment is made by professionals or state-paid judges, or you have jury trial, as was prescribed by our 1215 Great Charter Constitution. There isn't anything else. You either have your peers and your social equals judging you, or you outsource justice to government. One of those is in alignment with natural law, and one of those isn't. Jury justice is self-governance. And I'm going to finish with this quotation from Lysander Spooner's essay on trial by jury. Have a listen to this one. The authority to judge what are the powers of the government and what are the liberties of the people must necessarily be vested in one or other of the parties themselves, the government or the people, because there is no third party to whom it can be entrusted. If the authority be vested in the government is absolute, and the people have no liberties except such as the government sees fit to indulge them with. If, on the other hand, the power be vested in the people, then the people have all liberties, as against the government, except such as substantially the whole people, through a jury, choose to disclaim. And the government can exercise no power except such as substantially the whole people, through a jury, consent that it may exercise. Thanks for listening.